Welcome in, everyone, to another edition of Life Without Limits with Joan Kaler. I'm so glad that you're with us today. I have a very exciting show for you. My name is Joan Kaler. I am a licensed counselor in the U.S., and I am a consultant all over the world in emotional freedom techniques. If I can be of service in any way, please go to my website, lifewithoutlimits.expert. So today's show is very exciting. Today we're talking about emotional freedom techniques for food cravings and weight loss. Now, if that is not interest enough to you, then you're welcome to go to another podcast, but make sure it's mine. But I'm telling you right now, this is going to be a fantastic show because we have, if not certainly one of the world's leading experts on emotional freedom techniques, the research of EFT, the teaching of EFT, Dr. Peta Stapleton. I'm just going to read, I take the whole show up in her accolades, but I'm just going to read a little bit about her right now. Dr. Peter Stapleton has 22 years experience as a registered clinical and health psychologist in the state of Queensland, Australia. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. And all my Aussie listeners and viewers, we are going down under today. Yeah. She has completed a Bachelor of Arts postgraduate diploma of professional psychology and Doctor of Philosophy. She is associate professor in psychology at Bond University. Peta is well known, very well known, in her area of specialty within Queensland and is consulted for radio, television, and print media interviews for her expert opinion. She has been awarded many honors, including the Australian Psychological Society Dignan Award for research into women's issues. Peta has many books out right now, Using EFT to Attract Money Subconsciously, Your Mind Power Strategies for Behavior Change. She's coming out with a new one shortly. It may already be out, and I'm going to show you all these on Amazon. Her most significant contribution in research has been to lead a world first randomized clinical trials investigating the effectiveness of emotional freedom techniques for food cravings in overweight and obese adults. And I'm going to show you, as we get into the podcast, this research. So without further ado, it is my great honor and privilege to welcome in Dr. Peta Stapleton. Hello, Peta. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you so much for the invitation. And obviously, it's nice to connect again.
Oh, you're fantastic. I'm just so thrilled for all our listeners and viewers. And now that I know how to do video podcasts, woohoo! People can actually see you.
Yes, yeah. I know. Fantastic.
Well, Peta, for anyone who might be from another planet that doesn't know what emotional freedom techniques are, and I shouldn't be facetious because there are still people that may not know what EFT is. So let's introduce it to them a little bit. Could you describe what EFT is, rather?
Yes, sure. So we call it EFT, like you've said, Joan. We often refer to it as tapping. A lot of people might have heard that kind of phrase around because it does describe what we do. So it's a fairly brief intervention, if you like, and it really is a stress reduction technique where we actually tap on pressure points on the body while we kind of state what our concern is, which engages a certain part of the brain. And it's the actual tapping on these pressure points that actually, I guess, sends back a different signal to that stress center and ultimately calms us down. So we often say it has a cognitive element, meaning the words we say, but a somatic element, which is the physicalness of tapping on acupressure points. A lot of listeners might be familiar with acupuncture, which obviously uses fine needles. And sometimes people do call EFT or tapping psychological acupuncture because we don't use any needles, but we certainly stimulate those pressure points with a tapping technique. So yeah, it's a fabulous stress reduction tool, but it has so many applications, and we'll obviously get into some of them today.
Now, in your research, EFT for food cravings, how many years did it was this study involved in? How many years did you do this controlled double-blind study?
Yeah, most of our trials take on average about 2 years, because whilst we might do the intervention for an 8-week period, which might be 16 hours worth of tapping, 2 hours a week, we do very long-term follow-up periods. So we want to know whether or not a year down the track, and at the moment we're doing a 2-year follow-up on one of our trials. So it can take kind of 2 years to get that data. But there's a lot of strength in that, because we can at least see the longevity of how long things last, like tapping on food cravings, weight loss, that sort of thing. So, yeah, we're obviously fairly patient people. We sit there waiting, and it can seem like it takes a long time for us to get the results out there, but it really does give us a lot more evidence than just 3 months down the track saying, oh, yes, that worked.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you have the longitudinal study to get the data to support the original data that comes out. It's just not tap, okay, the food craving is gone, see you, bye, it's okay. Then the people that participate in these clinical trials, then they're followed up for 2 years.
Yes, yeah, on average. So every 6 months we'll actually go back to them. So we have quite a few time points that we revisit. But yeah, they hear from us, and they're aware of that in the beginning, that they'll keep hearing from us for the next sort of 2 years, every 6 months.
That's fantastic. So everyone out there, this research is so important because we do have the long-term results. As we say in the land of tapping, test the results. So there's no better test than a long-term study to see if the initial results are still true 6 months and 2 years later. You can't do better than that. Yeah. And what was the data, Peter? What did you find?
So when we started, Joan, which was now around, think of the year, probably 14, 15 years ago was our first sort of clinical trial that we ran. We definitely found tapping worked on everything that we were measuring. So we were measuring how severe is your food craving. So most of our participants were eating their food craving like 5 times a day. So that was how severe it was. So we had an impact on that, the presence of food. So if food's in front of you and you're working away, and just because it's there, you might kind of tend to want to eat it. We measure that type of thing, so willpower. We also measure, obviously, things like anxiety symptoms, depression symptoms, somatic, physical symptoms, those kind of things. So everything that we measured way back in the beginning significantly improved, which means they reduced. So people didn't have a food craving anymore. They had more increase in restraint ability. Their depression symptoms dropped off. So a year later, when we went back, they were still obviously significantly improved. So if anything, we said to people, how's your food craving now? And they looked at us and went, what food craving? What are you talking about? Wow. So they had completely obviously removed those foods from their diet, but there was no willpower involved. So that was obviously fairly significant in that no one else had tested EFT or tapping in that food space. So we went on to compare, because obviously when you prove something fairly new and different, like tapping works, a lot of people in the academic community say, well, how does it compare to a gold standard that might be out there, like therapies we already know that work? So we did that. We went on to compare tapping to cognitive behavioral therapy, which CBT, and we showed that EFT tapping was as effective as CBT for some of those things like depression symptoms, restraint ability, but it was actually superior for anxiety symptoms and food cravings, and lasted a lot longer over time. So, and EFT's faster to get the results than something like cognitive behavioral therapy. So we showed that the EFT group were able to get their gains in 8 weeks. The CBT people got gains, but it took 6 months. So that's the difference. So whilst it's comparable, it almost isn't, because of the time frame needed. So you've got 8 weeks compared to 6 months. So, yeah.
So you all out there, would you like 8 weeks or would you like 6 months?
Literally, yeah, that is what it comes down to. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Fabulous.
So, I know. So we've sort of gone off and We've delivered it in the online space now, tested it to see whether or not delivery over video, where people still have contact with us in an online support group, but really they learn it through video. That worked. We compared that to the people that turned up in person. How did it compare? Obviously, they were identical, so they got the same outcomes. And most recently, last year, we did brain scan studies. So we wanted to know, well, what happens in your brain? So we finally have done that study too, which has been a long time coming.
Wow. Could we just talk about that a little bit, Peta? When you did the brain imaging, what parts of the brain lit up during the food cravings?
Yes. So what we did was we put our people, they went inside the MRI machine. So our listeners might know, that scans the brain. What we look for in a functional MRI is blood flow to an area of the brain. So when we think of something, blood goes to that area. We then see that as a signal. And we had them wearing a headset. So they were wearing a headset where we could show them photographs of food. And these photos cycled through every couple of seconds for about 5 minutes. We had 6 photos of food so that they could look at a photo of food, imagine eating it, and then we could see the signal in the brain. So they did that. Then they went off and did their 4-week tapping program. Then they came back and had another scan with the same images. So the parts of the brain that lit up in the beginning were parts to do with thinking. So because we'd asked them to think about eating the food. So we definitely saw that kind of aspect. But the major part that was lighting up was to do with reward and deprivation. So these people knew that they were going to embark on a food craving EFT program to get rid of their food cravings. So it was almost like the Last Supper effect that they were lighting up. And so there was reward area lighting up, which was very much to do with, this is pleasurable food to look at. But deprivation was lighting up because they knew that they were going to do tapping on it. So it was really curious to have a look at. And what happened was they go off, do their 4 weeks or 8 hours worth of tapping, came back, and the amount of reduction in the signal in their post-scan was so dramatic that on some of the scans there was nothing that was lighting up. And so my radiologist that was obviously part of the team was looking at these, we were watching them live, and he was like, what have you done to these people? They look like they're asleep, but they weren't, because they were just lying there looking at the photos, and the photos had no impact on them.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Yeah.
I can't take it anymore. I want to take people to your research. So I'm going to share my screen for just a moment here. As soon as I find where this is, here it is.
Fantastic. Okay. What have you got there, Joan?
Oh yeah, I've got all the good stuff here. Okay, folks. Here it is. It was published in OBM, Integrative and Complementary Medicine, Emotional Freedom Techniques for Food Cravings in Overweight Adults, a comparison of treatment length. So you all can have access. If you want to Google it, here is where it is. You have access to this study. Yep, is this not cool or what, folks? I am telling you. Oh my gosh, this podcast is going to get 10 billion downloads. Please.
We can give you a lot more than that if people want to read further as well. That's fantastic. Great.
I'm just flicking
through.
And these are all the points.
Yep.
Okay, top of head. Beginning of eyebrow, side of eye, under nose, below lip, collarbone, underarm. Yeah. And thank you to Gary Craig, who created this back in 1993, so we could all lead better lives.
That's right.
I realize I'm going through this, folks, really, really, really fast, but I just want you to be able to see. This is really hard research, everybody. This is not fluff.
Yeah, look at all those references.
Exactly. Peta Stapleton knows what she's doing. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing for a memento here. Wow. Because I'm going to take people to your website eventually. So, Miss Peta, or Dr. Peta,
sure.
I'm going to let you lead this, and let's take people through a tapping for a food craving.
Absolutely. Let's do that.
Let's do that. Let's give them a setup statement here. A setup statement is bringing the file up in people's brain as to what they want to tap on and what they want to let go of. So I'll be quiet. Without further ado, if someone has a craving for chocolate chip cookies.
Oh, yes, that's a common one. And it was a photo in the brain scan trial. We had a big chocolate chip cookie. So you must have been on the money there, Joan.
Okay.
We really recommend, even if people want to watch this back after the show, we really recommend if you can have the food in front of you, it's even more powerful. So if for whatever reason I had my chocolate chip cookie, I could actually smell the cookie. I could even have a bite of it and have a taste. And we want to find out what it is that people really like about the cookie or the chocolate or the cake or whatever it is, because that is what we're trying to reduce with the tapping. We're trying to reduce the sensation of that desire level. So we might say something like in our setup statement, even though I love the smell of this chocolate chip cookie, right here, right now, I accept myself anyway, that kind of thing. So it could be about the smell. It could be about the taste for someone. It could be about the sensation in their mouth. It's whatever's really standing out to them at that craving level. So when we say the setup statement, we do tap with 2 fingers on the side of the hand here. We might do that today. And if you be my echo, Joan, we'll just go with the smell of the chocolate chip cookie, and I'll just show listeners how this actually works. So after me. So even though this chocolate chip cookie smells so fantastic, I accept myself anyway. So we'll do 2 more. Even though this chocolate chip cookie smells amazing, I accept myself anyway. Even though this chocolate chip cookie smells so chocolatey,
that's a good one. Smells so chocolatey.
it's so warm
and
comforting, I accept my craving. So now we would come to the first point, which is up here at the start of the eyebrow, and we would just say a short word or 2 to remind ourselves about this cookie. So we might say, smells amazing. Side of the eye for our next one. Smells fantastic. Under the eye.
I'm thinking about the chocolate chip cookies that I have at home right now. This hopefully will tap it out.
Smells fantastic. Under the nose. Smells so chocolatey. On the chin point. This chocolatey smell. Under the collarbone.
That's a good point.
Under the collarbone. This chocolate smell. Under the arm. This cookie smell. And top of the head there. This chocolate cookie smell. Now we would take a deep breath at this point, and because when we do food cravings, it's very much exposure therapy. We would have our cookie. We would use the cookie to sort of test where are we at now. And we would have a smell of it and we would see what's happening now. We'd give it a number out of 10. How strong is it out of 10 for that smell desire? And what we're aiming for is a lower number out of 10, 10 being the highest. So if someone sort of says, oh, look, it has changed a little bit, it's not as powerful, we would come back to the eyebrow, we'd do another round on smell. And sometimes for people, that will change, but then if they have a taste of it, there'll be another aspect, what we call in it, tapping aspects. So that it might be smells changed, but actually I can still feel the crunch in my mouth. So we would change our words then to be about the crunch. And it might only take sort of 5 or 6 rounds of tapping on the different things appealing about that cookie before someone says, I don't feel like this anymore. I don't actually have a desire to want to eat this cookie. And then, of course, that's the power in tapping, that they can take it or leave it. If anything, it gives them choice. The power isn't in the cookie anymore. They have it. So it's almost a bit counterintuitive because what we're saying and, you know, our faces light up because the words are like, it's amazing this, because that's what's happening for us is this food is having such appeal that that's actually the words we use when we're tapping.
It's fantastic. And one of the things I want to point out to everyone is EFT has evolved to the point where we don't need to do the long version anymore. So some folks might be familiar with tapping all the fingers, tapping on the back of the hand on the gamut point, humming, counting, humming, going through all that 9 steps, all those 9 steps, but we don't need to do that anymore.
No, and what we've really done, every trial we've run, we've only done what we just did, where we do our setup statement and our 8 points. So all of our 15 years of research have tested just the brief version, those 8 points only. So we actually do know that that is all you need in a lot of areas, even though, you know, it is quite useful to add in some of those extra points with more severe traumas and things like that.
So I'm going to say something that my clients always ask me. I know the answer, but I want people to hear it from you. And that's the cynical part of people that said, oh, come on, how could something so simple like that really be effective or really help me? I don't believe it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard that one before. And it does look simple. It looks almost too good to be true. And sometimes people will have that as a belief as well. I guess what we do know, even from the acupuncture research, and Harvard University in Boston has done this, where they've looked at the acupuncture research and said that acupuncture and acupoints indeed exist. There are more dense areas of the body that come together, like at what we call the acupoint. And tapping on those points does send a signal back to the stress center in the brain, the amygdala, and it calms that down. So whether or not you're tapping on it or you're having acupuncture, the research already exists around that. So sometimes it is a matter of sort of putting aside perhaps doubt or cynicism, like you said, and give it a go anyway, because what have you got to lose kind of thing. Yeah, so we do in all of our trials do tapping on doubt. So we actually start off every program with who thinks this will work, who thinks it'll work for other people but not them, and we will tap just on some doubt, just on some you know, feelings like that, just to sort of reduce those, so at least the technique has half a chance of working for them, which is good. They all have a laugh.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll have my clients just say, even though this is the silliest thing I've ever seen and I don't think it'll work, I'm open to just exploring it anyway. And then we do a little tap on that just to break through to that unconscious or conscious resistance that they might have.
Yes.
Because I'll say, okay, before we even start this, I want to help tap out this doubt that you have and just be open to trying it just to see what might happen. If nothing happens, then we'll try something else. But this is so easy and so simple that let's just try this so we don't have to go into something more complicated.
Exactly right. And it can be so rapid sometimes that it almost takes your breath away how fast it does work for a lot of people.
I'm thinking that chocolate chip cookie that I have at home doesn't really have the draw that it had before I tapped.
You'll have to go home and test that one, Joan.
I know, I'm going to have to go home and test it and send you an email. So I want to take people right now to Amazon because I want to talk about all the books that you've written.
Right, and there's another one coming out next year.
I know, it's like, oh my gosh, this woman, she can't be stopped. She just goes like the ever-ready.
I don't know where I find time to write books, but it happens.
Now the question is, where did I put, oh, I know what I did. Okay, I put that one first. Actually, what we're going to do is I'm going to go to your website. I want people to see that. But okay, share. All right, folks, this is Dr. Peta Stapleton's website, Evidence-Based EFT, and I'm going to get our pictures out of the way so you can see the whole thing. Sure. See, I love the name of this site, Evidence-Based EFT. It truly is evidence-based. So let me just put us over here and scroll down so that you can see all this good stuff that she has on her site. I mean, it's fantastic.
Thank you, Joan.
Oh, absolutely. I've been tapping in the classroom. If there are any administrators, teachers, instructors, anybody that has anything to do with teaching children, please take Peta Stapleton's course, Tapping in the Classroom. It's dynamic. It can so help children relax, take away the stress of testing, the trauma of bullying, anything else that's going on. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment here. I did bring Amazon up, although I think that tab is hiding right now. Let's tell everyone about the books that you've written. You've got EFT for Introverts.
Yeah, so that one has just come out only in the last month. So we wrote EFT for Introverts as one of the EFT Universe sort of series.
Okay.
So it really is designed for somebody that's brand new to tapping, wants to know a little bit about it, but obviously that one's really pitched at introverts and how tapping can really help. Introverts are often quite in tune at a sensory level, and that can obviously lead to anxiety. So it teaches them how to use tapping and how to kind of take perhaps the fantastic ideas that introverts often get, but don't take that next step to put themselves out there in the world, and how tapping can support that. And funnily enough, and I tell people this all the time, I'm an introvert. So
I find that hard to believe, but okay.
I know. So. People say that, but I guess, to do research and, bury yourself and write, being a fair amount of introvert obviously helps with that process. So that one, I really loved writing that book, and I wrote it with a colleague here in Melbourne. So she is an EFT practitioner and an introvert herself as well, but a businesswoman. So really how it can be used. So loved that book. Last year we released EFT for Teens. So that's a book that is out there too, hard copy and Kindle as well on Amazon, where teenagers can pick it up in the privacy of their bedroom, read about other stories of teenagers in that book of how they've used tapping, what tapping is, and lots of different scenarios they can apply it to. Everything from, if your mum and dad are fighting, or you've got bullying at school, or you want to do better at the sports athletics that you're doing at school, here's how to use tapping. So we cover and I consulted my teenagers. So I have 2 teenagers in my house, both girls. So consulted them to make sure I'd covered all the topics in that book. So they're out there floating around with some other ones that have been out there for years. But most exciting for me is next year in March, Hay House will release The Science Behind Tapping, which is going through its editing process at the moment with Hay House. So
congratulations.
I'm really looking forward to that one. It covers every chapter is an area of research with tapping, and we do include other tapping techniques. So some matrix re-imprinting, trauma tapping, Tapas Fleming's technique. So there's a bunch of others, TFT as well. So lots of techniques in that all evolve around tapping. But it's written so that anybody in the community can pick that book up and kind of go, well, how does it work for pain? How does it work for addictions? How does it work for depression, anxiety? And every chapter is its own dive deep into the research, and lots of case studies in there. So it's a nice, easy read, but full of the evidence. So I'm really proud of that book.
Oh, I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited for all of us. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy it.
When that comes out, that is going to be my Bible that I'm taking with me to every class I teach, because when we talk about science, then I won't have to bring it up on the internet. I'll say, here.
Yeah, it's in a book.
It's in a book, right here. Get this book.
It's in a book.
That's right. You bring up such an excellent point in that tapping can be used on everything and anything. We're not saying that it's going to work for everyone on everything and anything, but it can be tried. And if you are in the medical field, then if you want to help your patients with pain control, it can be very helpful for that.
Yes.
So truly it is a phenomena. And those of us who are in the land of tapping, I mean, if it wasn't for tapping, I wouldn't be doing this podcast right now, because I had to tap out all my doubts, all my fears, all my frustrations of learning how to do this.
Yes.
Tapping has propelled me to levels that I never dreamed possible.
Yeah. I know we were laughing before the show, weren't we, about what what would we have done if we didn't know this technique? Like, you just sort of can't imagine a world where you didn't have this strategy to
Right.
instantly calm yourself if you need to.
Exactly. I watch my clients have cognitive shifts all the time.
Yes.
And I just smile and I write down really fast what they've said. And I'll say, that's interesting. That's not what you said a few minutes ago or when you walked in the door. Do you realize that?
Yes.
I mean, okay, subjective units of distress, suds aside, you've just had a shift in your perception.
And their belief, that's right.
And
then we know now that there's reasons that happen, and the book itself has a whole chapter on why tapping results in that what we call memory reconsolidation. So we won't get into it, but it really explains why we believe that happens, and why a year later I can ask my participants, how's your food craving? And they go, what food craving? I don't even know what you're talking about. And how the brain can do that, and they don't have to keep tapping.
Yes.
So
that's
don't have to
an excellent point, because many people will say, well, isn't that an addiction or a compulsion in and of itself? And I'll say no, because you're tapping out the core belief and the anxiety, whatever is triggering the compulsion in the first place, because I teach EFT for OCD all the time. Yeah. So
the book has a whole chapter dedicated to how that actually happens, what we believe about what happens in the brain. So, because you're right, people do ask, how come you don't have to keep doing the technique?
Thank you so much, Peter, for choosing EFT as your life's work.
Joan, I thank you. I look back now a lot of the time, and I think it picked me, because at the time that I had the opportunity to do research, we were running a weight loss program that included tapping, like EFT. It included a lot of NLP techniques, neuro-linguistic programming. It included some timeline therapy. It was quite a comprehensive program. We were having a lot of success. I said to a colleague, got to do some research. Why don't we do it on some of our programs? And we sort of looked at the program and thought, what could we do it on that's going to be easy and simple? And we picked EFT because we thought that's one technique only, and we'll be able to, and the rest is history. So at some level, I think it probably picked me, but I'm truly grateful that I love what I do. Like, I literally love what I do. So.
I do too. So everybody that's listening and watching out there, Dr. Peter Stapleton and myself, either one of us, if you need us to come and do a training for you, teach you tapping, teach your group, I'm excited to say that shortly I will be offering continuing education for teaching the first level of emotional freedom techniques. So lifewithoutlimits.expert if you want to get a hold of me for that, or you want to consult with me. I'm happy to take you through a tapping session. I consult all over the world. So you can be across the street, or you can be across the other side of the world. Of course, you've got Dr. Stapleton and her team in Australia. But if anybody needs our help, we are of service.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for educating us, for talking with us today. And I want to thank all my viewers, all my listeners. Keep coming back, because this podcast, Life Without Limits, keeps getting better and better. So I look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you, and see you next time.